Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Chubbs Reviews, where I bring you a review every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I hope you guys had a great weekend. Today, I'm bringing you a review of the first X-Men movie. It's kind of my first time ever watching the first X-Men movie and taking it all in. I did watch it twice for this review, but it was my first time watching it within this week. Um, and to be introduced to the X-Men world, in a sense, I did watch, obviously, First Class and X-Men's Wolverine, or Origins Wolverine, before and reviewed those movies. And those just kind of set up some background to these characters. Um, but obviously some of them, one of those two movies was garbage. Anyway, today we're talking about the X-Men movie, which has a very interesting story we got going on here. It's completely opposite of like a Marvel or Marvel Cinematic Universe take on the world. I think this is very much a more realistic take on how humans would treat mutants or superheroes, but they're called mutants in this movie. Um, in real life, they are hated by the humans, and in the beginning of the movie starts off with a political bill trying to be passed about how should they have to be pretty much like should every mutant have to be registered or whatever. And then that's pretty much the human side of things, and then we got the other two sides. I'm also going to talk about spoilers because this movie's like 20 years old. The other two sides of the coin, besides the humans and the politics, which is done very well, and there's a lot of themes in there about how they're just humans fear mutants, but mutants also fear humans in a sense. And Mystique is very she has a scene in there at one point where you're the type of guy that made me be scared to go to school when I was younger. Just some good scenes in there and some good themes about political issues that you don't see in other superhero movies, or social issues even. But yeah, and then the other two sides of the coin are obviously the main two sides is Professor X and the X-Men, which include Storm, Cyclops. Storm is pretty okay in the movie. I mean, I like Halle Berry, but has a lot of cheesy, corny lines, and barely any lines at all, actually. But that one line where when she's fighting Toad, the villain Toad, and she's like, "Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? It's the same thing that happens to everything else." And it started off cool, but that was just cheesy and lame. Um, and pretty much she gets her ass kicked throughout the movie, and so does Cyclops in a sense, and the X-Men in general kind of get their ass kicked in this movie, but they kind of come out on top at the very last second. It feels like a fucking WWE wrestling match, to where they're just losing the entire fight, but then they come back at the end because the crowd wants them to, which in a sense made for some really intense action in the end of the movie when you know all three sides and what's at stake. Because the other side, Professor X is the side of he has hope for humans and doesn't discourage humans, and he has this school for mutants to help them out and teach them how to control their powers, and basically he just doesn't hate humans. And the other side is Magneto, which he does hate humans because they show early on the opening scene as well is Magneto as a kid in a like Auschwitz in a concentration camp. I shouldn't say Auschwitz, but a concentration camp, getting his mother taken away, and so he knows what it's like to be put and marginalized and registered. Have numbers on your body, go by a number, and that's what they want to do with the mutants, basically. So he's not for that. He's very aggressive. He has his Brotherhood of Mutants, including Sabretooth and Toad, like I said, but they both are just henchmen, basically. But Mystique is pretty badass. I liked her a lot in First Class. Obviously, doesn't have any character development in this movie, but she's fucking hilarious and just badass. The fight scenes overall in this movie are pretty solid. They're not no Marvel movies because this movie was made 20 years ago, but even today it holds up. Except for some flying CGI when Magneto flies around, it doesn't look great. And also, but yeah, especially Mystique versus Wolverine's fight in this movie is great. Just my favorite part of probably the whole movie. Mystique is just elegant in her movement and badass and sexy and just a very like sexual character. And I don't know why I'm so hyped about her being sexual, but she was just badass, and she does get outplayed, but is what it is, and we'll see her in the other movies. And I like her ability, man. Her ability to just turn into people is constantly making you second guess who's who, and the movie does a great uh, visual representation of not making you confused on who she's playing at the time. But she can turn into anyone, and that is just dope. And the way Magneto kind of uses her power for him it's a cool set of villains right there. Them two, and especially Magneto. Like I forgot to mention the fucking casting in this movie. I mean, we talk about Robbie Downey Jr. as Iron Man, and even Wesley Snipes as Blade. But Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is great. Um, what's his name? I can't think of it. Patrick Stewart as Professor X is great, and Ian McKellen as Magneto is magnificent. He is just awesome. He just some great voice lines like this. I'm trying to think of some of the lines that he made, especially, but I don't know, every single voice, every time Magneto's on screen is just an intense moment. When he's speaking, I almost wish he spoke less in the movie because it would come off more wise and badass. But it's more aggressive, and he's more like a Malcolm X towards the humans versus a Professor X, which is more of like a Martin Luther King approach. I don't know. That's how I would describe him. And yeah, the badass fight scenes are pretty cool. In the beginning of the movie, you go through the eyes of Rogue as you see her learn about her powers of touching people, and it kind of kills them and takes their powers if they're a mutant, or and her introduction to the school of Professor X's school, and just basically all the questions you have, Rogue has. So that's a great way to get you into the world. And there's a lot of great intense scenes with Wolverine, beating up people and being intense and freaking out, and especially his introduction to the school. Um, yeah, I would say my only problems with this movie are like a little bit of the X Men aren't the X Men are kind of lame at some parts. Besides Professor X and Wolverine, but and also some of the really dramatic parts and some the things that I had to. This movie I watched it twice because the second viewing I had a feeling would be a lot better than the first one, and that's true. I do recommend watching this movie twice because certain things like when you see what Magneto's doing to like the senator guy, like it just looks weird and it's all wacky and stuff, and you don't realize he's turning him into a mutant. At least I did. Maybe I just fucking didn't catch it at first or something. I just realized later, and the way he even died and turned into this like water creature, it was just kind of really wacky and goofy and felt out of place. And like when he was going through the bars with his eyes poking out, I don't know. Some scenes like that were just really weird to me and out of place. And some of the movie dragged for me. Like it just dragged on. Even though this movie's only an hour and a half, some of the parts dragged on. And but it does come to a satisfying ending, and I'm excited to watch X2. I've heard it's just as good, if not better. And this movie, I do appreciate it a lot more now. I do appreciate these characters, and like I said, the great casting. But Halle Berry or Storm and Cyclops are kind of just side characters that are just comedy relief. Rogue gets more in-depth characterization than them two. You see some appearances from like Iceman, and you hear about Kitty Pryde, but a lot of like X-Men comic booky stuff and Easter eggs in is there, but I'm excited to see more. This movie is pretty good. I don't know if it's underrated because a lot of people hype this up to be a really good movie, and it's just it is good, but I wouldn't say it's mind blowing. I don't know. For me, final verdict is an 8 out of 10, and yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think of the X-Men movie and which one is your favorite down below. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.